I'm Gertrude.
Sitting here in the quiet of my now empty living room, the weight of what's happened presses down on me like a storm cloud. The house, once filled with the warmth of shared moments, now echoes with the silence of betrayal. It all started with a fishing trip, a seemingly innocent tradition that turned my world upside down. My husband, Victor, had always been the kind of man people admired. We lived in a cozy house on the outskirts of Evergreen, a small town in Oregon. The yard sloped gently towards the forest, and in the evenings, we'd sit on the porch, watching the sunset and sharing stories. Victor would come home from work, drop his keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, kiss me on the forehead, and ask about dinner. He was a hard worker, always laughing and promising that our weekends were sacred. One day, Victor mentioned a weekend fishing trip with his closest friends, Ethan, Lucas, and Miles. These were the men he'd known since college, friends who had shared countless hunting trips and campfires in the mountains. Fishing trips were their tradition, and Victor's eyes sparkled with excitement the night before he left. "We'll be up near Crater Lake," he said, throwing a sleeping bag into the back of his truck. "The old cabin in the woods. Just us, the fire, and the lake. Don't worry if I don't have service. Half the time, those woods are a dead zone." I kissed him goodbye at the door, telling him to have fun and catch something worth bragging about. He grinned, pulled me into a quick hug, and then he was gone, the sound of his truck fading into the distance. The house grew still in his absence. The first day alone passed slowly. I cleaned the house, organized the shelves, and even started a new knitting project, but the silence was overwhelming. I realized how much of my daily rhythm depended on Victor's presence, the sound of his boots in the entryway, the way he hummed while cooking, and the feeling of his arms around me at night. By evening, the house felt too big. I microwaved some leftovers and sat at the table alone, longing for the sound of his voice. As dusk settled outside, I leaned against the counter, sipping tea, and the thought came to me. The next day was Victor's birthday. We had planned a small celebration when he returned, but why wait? Why not surprise him? I pictured his face lighting up when I showed up at the cabin with his favorite food. The more I thought about it, the more excited I became. The next morning, I tied my hair back, put on an apron, and started preparing the food. I began with his favorite dessert, a chocolate cake, the recipe I'd learned from my grandmother. I carefully mixed the ingredients, poured the batter into the pan, and slid it into the oven. While the cake baked, I turned to the main course, grilled steak, seasoned with his favorite spices. I also made a fresh salad and a side of roasted potatoes. The kitchen filled with the delicious aroma of food, and I hummed along to the radio, lost in the rhythm of preparation. By noon, the kitchen looked like a scene from a holiday. The cake was cooling on the rack, the steak was marinating, and the salad was ready. I packed everything into a large cooler, along with plates, utensils, and a bottle of his favorite wine. The cooler felt heavy, but in a satisfying way, as if it carried not just food but my love and devotion. I loaded the cooler into the back seat of my car and set off. The drive was beautiful, with the autumn leaves painting the landscape in shades of red, orange, and yellow. The air was crisp and fresh, and I rolled down the window to let in the scent of pine needles and earth. As I got closer to the cabin, I noticed that my phone's signal was getting weaker. I remembered Victor saying that the area had poor reception, but I didn't mind. This was going to be a perfect surprise. When I reached the clearing near the cabin, I expected to see Victor's truck, Ethan's SUV, Lucas's Jeep, and Miles's old sedan. Instead, I saw a group of unfamiliar cars, a shiny new sports car, a luxury SUV, and a sleek sedan. For a moment, I thought I had taken the wrong turn. I checked the landmarks, and everything seemed familiar. This was the place. I turned off the engine, and a strange silence filled the car. Then, I heard a sound that didn't belong. Loud, pulsing music, the kind you'd hear in a nightclub. Along with the music came laughter, high-pitched and unmistakably female. My heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. I stepped out of the car, leaving the cooler in the back seat. The cold air wrapped around me like a cloak. I followed the path to the cabin, my heart pounding in my chest. As I got closer, the music and laughter grew louder. When I finally reached the cabin, I peeked through a window. What I saw shattered my world. The room, usually filled with fishing gear and the smell of wood smoke, was a mess. Bottles of alcohol were scattered on the table, and cigarette smoke hung in the air like a fog. A disco ball spun in the corner, casting colorful lights on the walls. And there, in the middle of it all, was Victor, sprawled on the couch with a young woman on his lap. She was wearing a skimpy top and short shorts, and her head was resting on his shoulder. Victor was grinning, whispering something in her ear, and she was laughing. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I looked around the room and saw Ethan with two women, Lucas pinning a woman against the wall, and Miles flirting with another woman. They were all supposed to be husbands and fathers, but here they were, in a drunken party with strangers. I felt a cold shock of betrayal. My body trembled, but I couldn't make a sound. I stood there, frozen, watching everything I believed in crumble before my eyes. The food I had prepared seemed like a cruel joke. I wanted to burst in and confront them, but my feet wouldn't move. Then slowly, I reached for my phone. I turned on the camera and started recording. I panned across the room, capturing every detail: the men's faces, the women's laughter, the empty bottles, and the mess. Each frame was evidence of their betrayal. When I was sure I had enough, I lowered the phone. I took one last look at the scene inside, then turned and walked back to my car. The drive home was a blur. I drove in silence, the music from the cabin still ringing in my ears. When I got home, I parked the car in the driveway and sat there for a long time, staring at the house. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in front of my laptop, watching the video over and over again. I used social media to find out who the women were. One by one, I discovered their identities: a college student, a dancer, a makeup artist, and a model. Each discovery made my heart ache more, but it also strengthened my resolve. The next morning, I created a new anonymous account on a messaging app. I added Victor's friends' wives, Ava, Lily, and Grace, and the women from the video. I sent the video without a single word. Within minutes, the chat exploded with messages. The wives were furious, and the women were in panic. Accusations, denials, and threats flew back and forth. When Victor came home the next day, he was in a good mood. He dropped his bag and grinned, saying, "You wouldn't believe the weekend we had. Best fishing trip ever." I didn't smile. I just looked at him and said, "Did you enjoy your time with that girl?" His face turned pale, and he froze. I showed him the group chat on my phone. His eyes widened as he read the messages. He tried to explain, but I didn't want to hear it. I told him I needed space and a lawyer. I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the table. "You ended it," I said softly. "I'm just giving it the name it deserves." I packed my things and left the house. Victor called after me, begging me to stay, but I didn't turn back. The door closed behind me, and I knew that my life would never be the same. In the following weeks, the news spread like wildfire in our small town. Victor and his friends' reputations were ruined. Their marriages fell apart, and their businesses suffered. They were shunned by the community, and their once strong friendship was broken. For me, the end was not about revenge. It was about finding my own strength and moving on. I found solace in my work, my friends, and my family. I started jogging by the lake, and each run was a reminder of my resilience. I cooked for myself, not out of duty, but out of love for myself. The video served its purpose, and I never watched it again. I left the past behind and focused on the future. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I was no longer bound by the lies and betrayal. I was ready to write a new chapter in my life.